What's up, you guys? Thank you so much for tuning in. My name is Roman Gonzalez. I am a director and editor based out of Los Angeles, California. And today I want to talk to you really quick about basic camera settings for music videos and kind of video in general. What settings I use and what different settings you want to use for different purposes. Obviously, the different settings such as shutter speed, aperture, color profile, those all affect how much light is entering into your camera, so the brightness of your image, darkness of your image, and the speed of let's just get into it. All right, so right here I have my T6i. I'm gonna go through some of the features in here. Right, so let's see, give me 1 second. Okay, so for video, right? Actually, it doesn't even matter which camera I use. I'm just gonna go over this, okay? So, first, within your settings on pretty much any DSLR camera that you're gonna be shooting on for a music video, besides like an iPhone or something, even though that's not a DSLR, you're gonna want to set your white balance. Usually, I set my white balance to auto, but you can set one of the. Usually, there's presets. There's usually tungsten for when you're in kind of like a bluish light indoor area. There's outdoor settings, there's nighttime settings, there's white fluorescent light. Usually those are the basic white balances, and then there's auto white balance. I tend to use auto white balance a little bit more, but if you're in an environment where you're switching from scene to scene and you're not cutting between those scenes, you don't want to use auto white balance because it's going to change your color every time that you move around. You can also do custom white balance. I will be putting out a tutorial on how to do your own custom white balance, but you can also save yourself some time and just go YouTube that, how to set your custom white balance for your personal camera. So that's the white balance. White balance is essentially, I don't want to say color temperature. Yeah, I guess it's color temperature. The white balance is basically the color temperature that your camera is reading. Secondly, we have shutter speed. Now the shutter speed is basically, if I can break it down for you, real simple for those of you who don't know, video is moving pictures, right? That's why they call it moving pictures. It's literally pictures being taken really, really, really fast and then set next to each other, just kind of like animation. So in traditional film, you are seeing 24 still images per second that are moving together to create one fluid motion picture. So 24 frames per second is the film standard. That's what people shot film in back in the day before digital. The digital standard is 30 frames per second. I don't shoot in 30 frames per second. I don't recommend that you do unless you're trying to get that kind of digital look. If you're going for a film, a cinematic look, you want to have your frame rate at 24. Also, as a rule of thumb, going back to the shutter speed, which is how fast those pictures are taken, you want your shutter speed to always be as close to twice your frame rate as possible. So if you're shooting in 24 frames, you want to have your shutter speed preferably at 48 frames per second. At just 48. Me personally, on my M50 that I'm shooting on right now, I'm shooting in 24 frames and my shutter speed is at 50 because I can't do 48. Most DSLRs will do 50. And then for slow motion, I bump up my frame rate and I shoot in 60 frames per second, which means I'm gonna need my shutter at 120 in order to get that smooth motion. And then I slow my 60 frames per second footage down 40%, which puts it at 24. Some nice, perfect, smooth, slow motion. So that's the basic rule of thumb, is you always want to make sure your shutter speed is twice what your frame rate is. So we went over white balance, shutter speed, frame rate, and the last little basic I want to touch on is aperture. If you bought a DSLR, it usually comes with a kit lens that it does like 3.5 to 5.6 aperture. Now, the lower you go in number, what it's going to do is it's going to kind of open up the lens, and it's going to let more light in. It's also going to give you more of a deeper depth of field, or less of a shallow depth of field, It's going to give you that nice bokeh that you see where you focus in on one thing and everything in the background is blurry. That's how you get that effect, is by lowering the aperture. If you bump the aperture up, you're talking 5 and up on your aperture, on your f-stop, that's going to let in less light. You're going to have like a darker frame, but more objects are going to be in focus. For example, right now I'm shooting at about 4.5. You can pretty much see me in focus, chairs in focus, and the computer is also in focus. If I bump that down, then you're gonna have maybe just me in focus, and this is gonna be blurry. If I bump it up, it's gonna be even more in focus, everything, and it's gonna get a little bit darker. So you wanna make sure you have proper lighting if you're having to shoot with your aperture closed, and vice versa. So those are the basics, as kind of best as I can describe them, just sitting here talking to you about it. The best thing you can do is just get out and play with these things. Know what happens when you lower the aperture and make it higher, same as the shutter. Play around with this stuff, make sure you're comfortable with what each and every little part of your camera does, and then get out there and make some money, man. I appreciate you guys. Go ahead and check out my Instagram. It's Roman Wasn't Built in a Day. If you don't follow me already, DM me on there. I respond to every single message I get as best as I can. And go ahead and subscribe here as well. I look forward to bringing you guys some more content. Appreciate you.